Now that we're starting to get a little bit more comfortable inside of our sculpting environment, let's take a look at the remeshing sequence inside of Blender, and specifically with the Blender sculpting tools. Keep in mind that the whole purpose behind the remeshing stage is to glue all of our discontiguous polygonal islands together into one solid chunk. As a reminder, and let me just go into edit mode here real fast, these are all separate pieces. I got that, I got my fins here. Now I want to be able to use my brush system to push and pull and to smooth and to really infuse a tremendous amount of detail inside of this sculpture itself. When all of these pieces are kind of disconnected from each other, that fails pretty quickly. So we need to glue them all together to give us a base for us to sculpt. Think of it like this. Imagine that you've taken a whole series, a lot of like individual balls of clay, and you've sculpted and pushed and pulled all those balls of clay individually, and now we're jamming them together so that we can expand those individual balls of clay into the final finished sculpture. It's pretty easy to do it. Let's jump in and do it real fast. The benefits are pretty huge. Of course, you can do this in a couple different places, but the easiest way to do all this is inside the sculpting layout. So I'm in the sculpting layout up here, and of course you can find all of our remeshing tools right here. Now, don't freak out. You're probably wondering, Pat, I don't see those remeshing options. Well, in order to see those workspace tools, we need to be in the correct mode. I'm in edit mode at the moment. If I return to sculpt mode, aha, check it out. Now we have some of those tools showing up once again inside of our toolbar. And of course, our remeshing tools are available to us right here. Now the remeshing tools are in two areas inside of our interface. They're in this cool little drop down at the top of the upper right hand side of our screen itself. We can also find the exact same tools in a slightly different area inside of our properties tabs way over here, and you're going to find it in this second one, or actually I guess technically it'd be the first one in the tabs, because this is an icon for the this part of the interface. So this here is going to bring to the surface our active tool and workspace options, and you can find the remeshing category of tools way down over here. And there's a bunch of them. It's 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. You're fundamentally going to be able to get access to the exact same tools and properties in both environments. I think just because it's a little bit easier and a little bit bigger inside the frame, I'm going to use this pull down menu up at the top right hand corner of the screen to get access to all of our remeshing tools. Now the thing that we need to change here, or excuse me, the thing that we need to examine before we make any changes to the mesh itself is the voxel size. There are really two properties that I would encourage you to experiment with, and I think that's the word of the day when it comes to remeshing. Your model is going to require some experimentation, and you're going to see me experiment with mine here in a second. There are no silver bullet magic presets that are going to work for every single object inside of our sculpting workflow. So we need to know how these two top choices are fundamentally going to affect our mesh. So the voxel size and the adaptivity. Let's just look at what the defaults are going to give us by clicking this gigantic remesh button way down here. Let's do it, remesh. And you can see, voila, our mesh is transformed. All of those individual pieces are now glued together, which is pretty cool. It's still straight up polygons. If I hit the tab key, go into edit mode, you can see pretty quickly I'm in my faces selection set. If I go into verts, there's verts. There's a whole bunch of them. But now it's all one piece, okay? You see that? That's not great, but it's all been glued together or welded together into one piece. And, you know, in the process, it kind of melts the shape a little bit. So if you look carefully, let me go out of edit into object mode. You can see that we're getting some deflation in the forms down here on these small fins. That's to be expected. Part of our workflow. Small thin little objects are going to get a little bit more crunched when we remesh it. That's okay, because we're going to go back in and change 100% of the mesh either way. So this is a known quantity, as they say. Okay, so if you look carefully here, I'm going to go back into edit mode because all of the verts and the wireframes are on. And let's just do it in the faces selection set. If you look real carefully, what the remeshing tool basically does is creates quad polygons over the entirety of our mesh while gluing all of these discontiguous polygonal islands together into one. So this is all one selected piece. If I hit the L key after selecting an edge loop, you can see that it selects everything. It's airtight, it's watertight. All the polygons are welded together, which is pretty cool. This allows us to now go in, if we'd like, with our sculpting tools and start to smooth out the shape and continue to do a lot of our work. Okay, so let's go back. I'm gonna hit the undo key a couple steps here, and I'm gonna go back to a version of my mesh before I remeshed it. There we go. And let's look at how we can change some of these properties to get a slightly different result. Remesh, but now under the voxel size, let's just increase it. I'm gonna put the values at 0.3. 0.1 meters is the default. What happens if we go up? Let's remesh it again. Ooh, now we're starting to lose detail. The higher that remesh voxel size is, okay, the less detail you're gonna get. And if we were to go back into edit mode real fast, you can actually see that we're getting fewer polygons. So a larger number does not equal more polygons. A larger number in the voxel size increases the shape, or increases the size of all the polygons as it's trying to put all this together. So keep that in mind. Some folks, they go the wrong direction. They want more polygons to preserve detail, so they start increasing the size of the voxels, which is not going to be what we're after. Let's do this again. I'm going to hit the undo key a couple times. Let's remesh it. Let's put it at, instead of 0.1, let's do 0.05, half of the defaults. Let's see what we get. Let's remesh again. Yeah, okay, and go hit the tab key, and now we have a lot of polygons, Mo polys, mo problems, as I say. At this stage of the sculpture, we don't need a zillion polygon, nor do we really want to have a zillion polygons floating across the entirety of our mesh itself. Now, when we add more polygons into the mesh, you can see that those areas of deflation that we were seeing before, way down over here in these small little fins, have generally been preserved. But man, we're getting a lot of banding in here now. More polygons at this early stage isn't necessarily going to make our sculpture better. Remember, in the sculpting process, we're going to be walking through a whole series of stages. And at each stage we're going to layer on additional detail. This is the first stage. We don't need a lot of detail yet. We'll get there. Okay, let's go back in time a couple steps, hit undo. I want to put the default values back to 0.1, and I want to show you what this adaptivity option is going to do. This is going to change the size of the polygon based on the area that the polygons are, or the area in which the computer thinks the polygon's going to go. It's going to kind of, let's do this, put the value at 0.1. It's going to try to add polygons where it thinks it needs additional polygons. And you can see here on the head of our hammerhead shark, this is all just one gigantic planar shape, so it didn't add a whole lot of polygons in there. It actually started to strip out some polygons. In the area in the center here, it added a whole bunch of polygons inside the scene because it thinks that it needs a whole series of polygons. Generally speaking, I leave this off. As you can see, the mesh that we get here is just a gigantic mess. There's not a lot of shape and form. The layout of all the polygons is of such that it doesn't give us a lot of good sculpting foundations, if you will. If you look here, this shape, that's a problem for me. I can't sculpt on that. The cool thing about having the adaptivity at 0 is that it's going to create a nice kind of uniform grid of polygons from the front to the back of your entire sculpture, which is exactly what we need at this stage of the sculpting process. So I'm going to hit undo again. Let's go back in time a couple steps. We're going to put the adaptivity back down to 0, and we'll be good to go. Now there's a couple other options inside the remeshing tools. Generally for the most part, leave preserve volume on. We'll talk about the role of masks and face sets much later on in the course, but this is a cool way of kind of recognizing the role of those masks in the remeshing process. Like I said, more on that much later. Let's go ahead and remesh it one last time. There we go. And things are looking pretty good. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I'm at this stage of the sculpture is I just like to do a spot check in edit mode. I just go in, I grab some verts, hit the G key to grab. I'm just trying to see, yep, make sure that, in fact, all of this stuff is welded together. Yeah, so just a kind of quick spot check here. before we really start going in and start sculpting out the process. The remeshing tools inside of Blender are really going to give us a fantastic foundation for us to sculpt on. Experiment with the options and make sure that the remeshing tool is correctly recreating your shape inside of the sculpting environment.